This is the judge coming to you solo for a little prologue to this episode. We recorded it before Matt Gaetz withdrew his name from the nomination for Attorney General, which, based on all the reporting, seems to be based on the fact that news agencies came forward and asked him for comment on yet another sexual abuse allegation involving a minor. And so this is going to be a little bit untimely, but we decided to cut it and release it anyway as episode 1.5, and I hope you enjoy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the ghost of Smedley Butler, and I'm here with the ghost of Judge James Horton, and we're the Yellowhammers. And we're here to inform the people of Alabama about politics and economics and what we can do to make Alabama just a little bit better. How you doing, Judge?
I'm doing great, General. How are you?
Good, good. Today we're talking about current events, and we're going to talk about the Honorable Matthew Lewis Gaetz.
Is Lewis really his middle name?
Lewis is really his middle name.
Louis.
Old Matty Lou Gaetz the second. He's not even junior. He's a deuce.
A deuce.
So the Honorable Mr. Gaetz has been in some hot water recently over an alleged allegation from an underage woman that included drugs, parties, all the good stuff. And he has resigned his position as the representative from the state of Florida in Congress to become the Attorney General of these United States of America under the Trump administration. Judge, what are your thoughts on that?
Before we even get to the investigation, which is going to be the meat of what we talk about today, and this is coming from somebody who thinks that Merrick Garland, the current AG, is perhaps the worst attorney general in the history of this country that I can think of off the top of my head.
Softer than baby shit.
Softer than tapioca pudding. Like, it's unbelievable. So, in about everything, right? White-collar crime, you name it.
But he's a moderate.
God save us from moderates. So, what he is establishment, which... You know what I think about that, but regardless, I digress. Matt Gaetz is not qualified for the job.
I don't think he's ever actually practiced law. He is an attorney. He's a licensed attorney.
He graduated from William and Mary, I think it was. So from there, he's not a very old guy. I would ask you how old he is now. He's 42 as we sit here now.
Born in May 7th, 1982 in Hollywood, Florida.
Hollywood. So... He's not very old, and thanks to the plastic surgery, he looks younger than he probably is. He graduates from William and Mary Law School, and then immediately, or very shortly after, he runs for office, gets elected to the House of Representatives.
I believe he comes from a political family. I think his father was pretty plugged into Florida Republican politics, and he was somewhat set up from birth to kind of run for office, be political animals down there. He just jumped ahead of kind of local state politics right into the limelight.
And that was his first stop with state politics, which is really where this story begins when we talk about the actual scandal. But you're absolutely right. He just for a very short period of time, I don't want to put an actual number on it, practices law at a regional firm there. Let me ask you, as an associate attorney, as fresh out of school, how much law are you actually doing?
Not a whole lot. You're doing a lot of research,
A lot of learning,
a lot of catch and carry. Grabbing the file folder,
a lot of hold the lot, watch how it's done.
Yep. Making sure the elder attorney wakes up on time during the trial.
Right, driving sometimes so
Right.
that they can study on the way to their court hearing. And so that is Gaetz's legal experience. And we're asking this man who's never managed a law firm, who very likely
Did he do any criminal work?
Not that I'm aware of, and who's very likely never tried a case in his life.
Man.
And if he has, it's not many. It's certainly not as many as...
And he's going to be in charge of the Department of Justice.
Exactly. We're putting that person in charge of the largest law enforcement body on the face of the earth. That by itself, you compare that to Bill Barr, Trump's first attorney general, he was immensely more qualified.
He was more qualified, but he was way more establishment corrupt. I go back to, do you remember who was appointed Attorney General to brush under the rug Reagan's Iran-Contra scandal.
Oliver North?
No.
I was about to say, I'm shooting the dark here.
Bill Barr.
Bill Barr? I did not know
Bill
that.
Barr was the Attorney General. That
Who was
made
Oliver
all
North in that? Because he's the one that took
Oliver
the
North
fall.
was the general that was in there that was facilitating the sales of the weapons to the Contras in order to free the Iranian hostages.
And to the previous point, Bill Barr was more qualified. Jeff Sessions, Alabama Jeff, was
Donald Trump
certainly-
did him dirty.
He absolutely did. He screwed Jeff Sessions, who was a true believer, and Jeff, who
I do believe Jeff Sessions has some faults, but
he's got scruples as well, though.
He's got some honorable streaks in him too.
And he stood up to Donald Trump when it came to some key things, and that's what cost him his job.
Got crushed.
But Jeff also had experience with that. He had prosecuted cases. I think he used to be Alabama's AG, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. Yeah.
So Jeff clearly was qualified for the job. Matt Gaetz is not. He's a yes man. He's a political animal. He's somebody that Trump knows he can put there, and he'll do whatever he says.
Do you think Matt Gaetz is going to go after Trump's political enemies?
Absolutely.
What makes you say that?
It's. Let me answer your question with a question.
That's so dumb.
I know. What possible reason? Because he's going to face a tough confirmation fight. It's far from a foregone conclusion that Matt Gaetz will get confirmed to the AG's office. He's got opposition from people in his own party. Stiff opposition. So he's got opposition there. Why would Trump nominate the man when there are more qualified Republicans who would get confirmed in an instant?
Because he would do anything Donald Trump told him to do.
Anything he tells him to do.
So who would be on his hit list? Would it be Democrats, or would he want to cleanse the Republican Party? Like, what are we looking at here?
Well, if you look to Project 2025, I think it starts with the administrative state.
Those are going to take out all the...
Trump is pissed at the Justice Department for the special counsel investigations. He's pissed at the FBI.
Oh, speaking of special counsel, Judge Cannon ruled that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, he's winding up the investigation anyway, so I think that's going to be a moot point. But it's clear that Trump has a long list of grievances that he's looking for the Justice Department to...
Quick question. If Matt Gaetz dismisses that case, is it dismissed with prejudice?
No. Well, that would be up to the judge, right? So the judge would have a sort of absolute discretion whether or not to dismiss the case without prejudice.
I believe there has to be some sort of factual ruling in order for a judge to dismiss with prejudice.
It just depends.
Don't give me it depends.
But
I need an absolute fine line here.
It does,
Judge.
though. In my experience, it depends on so many factors. It depends on how long the case has been going. It depends on how close the statute of limitations is to running. So many various factors. And I would like to tell you it would be dismissed without prejudice, but I just couldn't say. But the point about
the only way I think he could do it is if he struck a plea deal with the very light whatever. That way there's something on record. The judge can't say no to that, even if it's brought up later by another DOJ.
But if a judge enters a dismissal without prejudice, it's a Republican DOJ with Matt Gaetz in charge. They don't appeal the dismissal. The time period for appeal lapses. Then there's nothing. Even if it was an incorrect decision, you didn't preserve your right to appeal. You didn't perfect that right. So it's not going to get overturned. It simply is what it is. Or at least that would be my reading on how it would go down.
Okay. So that could, and then that could be real interesting considering state issues up in New York. But
it could.
That's neither here nor there. We're talking about
Matt Gaetz,
the Honorable Matt Gaetz,
Matthew Lewis Gaetz,
and
Deuce.
his great forehead, or should I say a 5-head?
He's got a good chin.
That guy looks like you ever seen Beavis from Beavis and Butthead?
I have.
Yeah. If he does all the drugs he talked about doing in that close door hearing, he'd be giggling like that.
Which gets us
Cornholio Gates.
Which takes us right to the heart of the issue. And the whole story starts back in Tallahassee when Matt Gaetz was a state representative.
Florida man Matt Gaetz.
Florida man Matt Gaetz with Florida man, who was his partner down there that pled guilty to the federal charges and got 11 years. Joel Greenberg was the guy's name.
That's right. I forgot about Joel because I think he turned on him.
He did turn on him. And we don't know the details of it because obviously the DOJ is not going to publicize why they declined to prosecute. But there was this Greenberg character. Joel Greenberg was the former tax collector for Seminole County. He was Republican, been in the party. And this is the time that a young Matt Gaetz is in the Florida state legislature. So they would throw all these parties. And actually what Greenberg pled guilty to was paying underage girls to have sex with him and other men.
All right.
They flew him all over the place. They paid him to do it. They plied him with drugs. They partied hard.
Didn't he find these girls through a sugar daddy type of website or something like that?
Very well could have. I'm not familiar with the exact way that one finds
we need this investigation out so we know exactly what website that is.
Which is part of the point. Transparency is something that we always advocate for. But it may come as a shock to you, but I'm not familiar with websites that people use to lure underage girls into seedy sex dens.
We should move to Florida and find out.
Right. I think I think that's just part of the education for Florida man. But so that's what happens. He pleads guilty to that, and he got 11 years, which is not a slap on the wrist. This is not one of those, here, go to this country club prison, do your 18 months, do a little bit of house arrest, and Martha Stewart's back on the street.
There was some, the feds got involved with some wire fraud stuff because they were doing everything over Venmo and Cash App or whatever.
That's typically what gives the feds jurisdiction is some transaction over a federally monitored financial service. But regardless, they have concurrent jurisdiction with sex trafficking of minors.
Right.
So, and when we're talking about minors, let's be honest. We're talking about 16, 17 years old. We're not talking 12. And while it's
to be fair, we don't know how old these girls were. We only know at least one or two of them who were 17 at the time.
Right.
Have come forward.
And so that's me proceeding on an assumption based on what the evidence currently is. So we don't want to make it worse than it is. But it's still creepy as hell when you have a 30-something-year-old. And in Florida, it's illegal, actually, because the age of consent there is 18.
In Alabama, it's 16.
16, right. Because that's how we do it.
That's how we roll in Alabama.
That's how we roll here. So
all he had to do was just take him to the Floribama. It'd have been illegal.
Right, would have been perfectly legal. Right across Perdido Key, and you're in. So, God, that was a bad joke. So, yeah, there's these wild parties with these underage girls, and there are a bunch of witnesses that say Matt Gaetz was there. That he was, and so right before we went on air today,
I was talking about the attorney that came out and said his client was walking by a pool.
Was a witness and saw it.
Yeah, and saw him having sex with her friend who was 17 at the time.
Right.
So we've got eyewitness testimony of statutory rape that has been put in front of the House Ethics Committee that is now not being released by House Speaker Mike Johnson because, quote unquote, Mr. Matthew Lewis Gaetz is a private citizen now.
Isn't it interesting that he just resigns his House position right before this happens so that suddenly the Ethics Commission loses jurisdiction over him?
Yeah, it's wild. I can't believe that would happen.
What a coincidence. So we've got all this. So actually what I was going to talk about a second ago was not just the lawyer who came out and said his client was a witness. A hacker. One of the true good.
I haven't heard about this part.
Yeah, this came out like an hour and a half, 2 hours before we went on air. A hacker has got unauthorized, obviously, because that's what hackers do. Got his hands on the testimony of the 17-year-old victim that said that she had sex with Matt Gaetz when she was underage.
So the victims come forward now and
the victim has always come forward. It was just sealed.
Okay.
So nobody knew about it, right? And so this hacker does us all a solid, gets the testimony, and it's hit the news. That not only is there the witness, but the victim herself says this happened. And so I know there's a lot of people who are desensitized to these allegations because of Me Too and the umpteen million allegations against Trump himself, against Deshaun Watson, against all these popular, powerful men, for lack of a better word.
If one girl comes forward and says, you did something while I was drunk and it was a shitty date, okay, that deserves some scrutiny. You've got multiple women and multiple eyewitnesses coming forward and saying, I saw what you did.
And you have close associates of Matt Gaetz who have pled guilty to federal charges and significant prison time.
Birds of a feather.
I'm going to ask you to cue up a video for us because we can all have this conversation now, and Republicans can talk about, because they're all on CNN right now or on Fox News or on whoever will give them the airtime, giving their opinion on the Gaetz appointment. Some are dragging the guy, some are defending it. So the one I want to call your attention to is, what is the guy's name? Mark Wayne Mullen, I think. And with a name like that, should have been from Alabama. But he's an Oklahoma congressman, one of the very men that are presumably, if we don't get recess appointments, presumably going to vote on whether or not they confirm Matt Gaetz. So he goes on CNN a year ago, and he gives an interview about Matt Gaetz. And what he says is so telling. It practically jumps off the screen. Now, he's saying something a little different today, but he didn't walk it all the way back. And so this is Republican Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen. He's not congressman, he's actually senator. Talking about Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. So this is Republican on Republican violence.
Well, yeah, the Republican, there's been like several quote unquote establishment Republicans come out against Matt Gaetz, especially some in the House of Representatives.
The people who know him best.
Yeah, because there was, I don't know who said it or it was leaked, but Matt Gaetz was showing pictures of all these girls that he talks to on this sugar daddy website that's, you know, giving them boob pics or whatever. And then he like bragged about crushing up Viagra so he could quote unquote go all night.
Yeah, he's literally Lamar Odom style railing lines of Viagra.
Oh, Lamar Odom.
You got to think about this guy. This is a guy that the media didn't give a time of day to after he was accused of sleeping with an underage girl. And there's a reason why no one in the conference came and defended him, because we had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. He'd brag about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with an energy drink so he could go all night. This is obviously before you got married. And so when that accusation came out, no one defended him, and then no one on the media would give him a time of the day.
Sitting Congress member
Mark Wayne Mullen
going after Matt Gaetz on a CNN interview
a year ago. And this is a senator, right? One of the very people that are going to vote on whether or not to confirm him.
You know, talking about how he was crushing ED medication so he could go all night, and then, you know, whipping his phone out to show everybody. One, that's the actions of a guy who doesn't get laid. Like,
Apparently he does. Just he has to be
pay
predatory about it.
Yeah. If you're actually out there, you know, with the ladies and doing well, you don't whip out your phone and show people.
To borrow a term, that's definitely beta male activity.
Oh, beta male.
Yeah. Not one I use
tattoo
too
that on
often.
his forehead, but
right.
No, Mr. Gaetz, he acts like a spoiled brat who's never been in a real fight in his life, and he's out here wrecking people's lives just so he can stay in a position of power. And now he's nominated to be the highest attorney in the United States of America to prosecute criminals. And he's ducking charges of having sex with a 17-year-old girl right now.
The highest law enforcement officer in this country will be accused of federal crimes. And for whatever reason, the DOJ didn't proceed. It's likely an issue of proof that Gaetz himself actually paid them. Right. But regardless.
But he's got testimony from his accomplice who said he did.
Who said he did it.
Turned to state's evidence.
The victim said he did it.
See, this is another problem I have with Merrick Garland's DOJ is that they want to have 100%, you know, guilty and all that. Sometimes you got to go with 95.
They're toothless.
Like, when you're going after criminals, you're not going to have the silver bullet all the time. You might have most of the bullet, but you ain't going to have the exact, you know, perfect, you know, locked up case. And I know the feds want to have that whenever they bring a case, which is why their conviction rates are so high.
Right. If the feds charge you, you're probably guilty.
Right. But if you've got 95% or 90% of what's going on, you can get them on the stand, put them in front of a jury, and pull out that other 10%.
Well, to your point, we have his good friend that went down for 11 years, turned state's evidence. We've got a witness. We have the testimony of the victim. And then we have a sitting United States Senator, Republican, talking about all the things that he's seen on Matt Gaetz' phone that shows that all the things that he's talking about, all the things that he's accused of, is consistent with his character. And that man will be the highest law enforcement officer in this country. If he's confirmed, and I think that's far from a foregone conclusion.
Well, for me, this is a symptom of a much, much deeper issue, and that's the lack of good men in politics. To dive into politics, your name is going to be run through the mud. People are going to dive into your past. They're going to
attack your family,
your kids, no matter what, to win an election. And good people don't want to do that. Rightfully so.
It's scary as hell.
But now the only people willing to go for those offices are just massive pieces of shit.
Shameless grifters.
They will say or do anything to get that power. And then when they get it, do anything to hold on to it. You know, gerrymandering doesn't help with that either. But the issue America's facing going forward is, can we have good people with morals and integrity?
Good people of virtue.
Yes, good people of virtue in places of power to do the right thing.
And Matt Gaetz, for example, if he wasn't appointed AG, he could have ran for re-election in that same district in Florida, that same safe red district, and been employed there, a thorn in everybody's side, his own party's side, for decades, and to be at no risk of getting fired just because there's an R next to his name. And I've got an issue with that, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democratic, the sorts of people that have been attracted to these offices, they're lifelong power-seeking missiles. And that's exactly what Matt Gaetz is.
And this is a bipartisan issue.
It absolutely is.
I do think the Democrats, though, were a little bit harder on their own caucus. You know, Bob Mendez got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and he got ejected from the Senate, as well as he should have. But the Republicans need to start culling their own party because no one's going to vote against them in their district. It has to come from top-down leadership. You have to, get their funding gone.
You have to police your own.
Yes. You got to take care of your own people and bring in quality candidates on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat.
And that's what happens when you have these safe districts. So, with the exception of the district in Mobile that Shamari Sellers just won in Alabama, every one of our districts are safe, red or blue. And so what that gets us is, it gets us really comfortable career politicians that are, never getting challenged for their job. They're never faced with the tough questions because they know, like Matt Gaetz, no matter what he does or what he's accused of, he's going to go back to that Florida district and he's going to win re-election every time. But like there's no realistic mechanism in this country.
I believe the word's called accountability.
There is no accountability. And part of the reason there's no accountability is we're by design, and I think this is the most insidious trick the powers that be, the billionaires have ever pulled, is convincing average everyday Americans that other average everyday Americans are their enemy. It's why we get such a polarized environment. Red districts, blue districts, and we have very few swing districts. And that's a product of this bipolar party system.
Well,
and that's what I think third parties could fix.
Yeah, it's turned into a game.
It has.
And there's too many people making money off this grift.
Do you bet on the red team or the blue team? And
right.
Did we win this time or did you win this time? That's all it is.
And I think a lot of this team mentality is why they're protecting Matt Gaetz.
It is.
He's on our team, so we got to make sure he's okay. And it sends a message to everyone else in your caucus. You can do whatever the hell you want. We got your back.
It does. And like you said, I do think the Democrats are better in that regard because they jettisoned Cuomo in New York when that stuff came out with the scandals, right?
And there was the House representative member in Louisiana that had like money in his fridge.
Yeah.
I want to lost like $300,000 or something.
So the Democrats do that. And I also want to applaud some Republicans like Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, who was doing that same thing. But if you watch him now, he's on every cable news network walking it back saying, oh, well, we need to hear what Mr. Gaetz has to say. You were calling him a piece of shit not a year ago in front of every camera who would listen. And he was doing it, I think, at the time because it was accurate and it was the right thing to do. And if it's the right thing to do then...
why is it not the right thing to do now?
Exactly.
I mean, have the courage of your convictions, stand up for your beliefs. Somebody in your party's being an a-hole, call them out.
Virtue doesn't take a vacation.
No, it doesn't. And, once again, we need to put good people in positions of power, and then we need to get them out.
The last thing that I want to touch on this issue, Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker of the House.
Oh, good old Kevin.
So he gets ousted by the Freedom Caucus, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, that super right-wing fringe of the Republican Party. And here is a Republican congressman speaking about the reasons that he's not going to confirm Matt Gaetz.
It has to do with him as a member of Congress. He doesn't do his job. He vacated the Speaker of the House, and as soon as he did, he sent out fundraising text messages and emails. That's abhorrent. That is somebody who's for themselves and not for the team. This has nothing to do, except for anything, about his job as a member of Congress and nothing else. And I've made that clear, and I've said nothing different. But as you can see, I'm not the only one who thinks this way. I just say the quiet part out loud, and I wish other of my colleagues would have the same courage to do so, because as I continuously get high fives and saying thank you, they could also do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, as someone who is under investigation, who is for sexual misconduct, could be running the Justice Department.
once again, I put the allegations aside. He's never going to get confirmed. I'm looking at him as a member of Congress and the job that he has done here, and it has been abhorrent. I know people want to talk about the salacious things that have been alleged against him in a report that may or may not come out. We'll all wait to see if that happens. But him as a member of Congress should not be the most powerful law enforcement individual in our country. And everyone knows it. And he's not going to get confirmed. And so this is solely based off of his job as a member of Congress within this body that has caused more harm, made us spend more money, has put us in more paralyzation than any other member. And there's no bigger rhino I can think about than anyone who votes with the entire Democrat Party to remove a Republican speaker.
Matt Gaetz said he was going to go against McCarthy. And the reason why he did was because of the ethics investigation. I think there was some dirty pool way back then where McCarthy, one, was sick of his shit, and two, was like, we need to get this guy out of here. And then Gaetz was able to round up 5 or 6 morons and jettison McCarthy. That's when we had, the 11 rounds of voting
however
for the
many it
speaker.
was.
Good Lord.
It was insane. The Republicans, because of Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, that Freedom Caucus, couldn't get together to elect their own leader.
I just want competent governance. I want people to come together, work for a common sense solution, as opposed to their own, re-election interests, their own kind of grift. Ted Cruz has his little podcast he does instead of actually going into the office and getting some work done. Like shit like that drives me fucking crazy.
It drives you nuts. And that's, Matt Gaetz is Exhibit A. He's the Swamp Thing in chief. And for those two reasons, I don't think he's going to get confirmed. He's not qualified. There's so much smoke, there's got to be fire surrounding the underage girls in the ethics investigation. And then finally, he crawfished and screwed his own party when it came to the Kevin McCarthy stuff.
Why is Speaker Johnson? Is he like the balls to just sink this motherfucker?
He does. That's how he got to be Speaker.
Well, I think that's all the time we've got for today. Once again, I'm the General. This is the Judge, and thank you for listening to our little podcast.
We'll see you.